I want to bring into the conversation Fox's Jonathan Seri. He has been out there following this from the very beginning. And Jonathan, I hear that we've gotten a new report that the police have officially returned Brian's Ford Mustang, his personal car, back to the home. Is that correct?
Yeah, we saw Brian's mom returning home in a Ford Mustang, and police have confirmed that they have released it from evidence. Now, the car is actually registered to Brian's mom, but he was driving it locally when he returned from his trip out west. He had spent the most time in it, and so police, during their investigation, when they got that search warrant of the home of Brian's parents, where he and Gabby had been living prior to their trip out west, authorities confiscated that car among other evidence, and apparently they're done retrieving evidence from the car. They would not comment on what, if anything, they were able to find and whether it led to any clues in their investigation, only confirming that that Ford Mustang belonging to Brian's mother has been returned to the family, and Brian's mother indeed was seen driving it back to her home, left the car in the driveway, and then got into a truck, leaving the property with her husband. Regina?
Now, Jonathan, we're also showing some footage. We were just showing the footage of when the car was removed from the home, but we're also seeing right now the footage of that white van that the couple took on their road trip across country. So as of right now, we know that the van is obviously still in custody. Is that correct?
That's correct. Authorities still holding that as evidence. That was the first piece of evidence that they took into custody. The search warrant of the home and the Ford Mustang didn't occur until earlier this week. They executed the search warrant a day after they discovered Gabby's body on Sunday. But when Brian was reported missing, police and actually before he was reported missing, when Gabby was reported missing, police immediately turned out to the family's home. The parents would not speak with officers. They would only give the contact information of their attorney, but they did find the van on their property. That van doesn't belong to the Laundries. It actually is registered to Gabby, and so it was easier for them to remove that van from the property without a search warrant of the Laundrie family property. They took that van into evidence, but again, they haven't said what, if anything, they have been able to glean in terms of their investigation. We do know from legal documents filed with Sarasota County Court in a search warrant that they were particularly interested in getting information off of a memory storage device, an external hard drive that was in that van. But again, they haven't said what, if anything, they found on that external drive, Regina.
Wow, very interesting to hear. I do want to ask you, Jonathan, about some new interesting information or claims we really got from neighbors that spoke with Fox News yesterday. What can you tell us about what they said as far as the family taking a camping trip right after Brian returned home from, that road trip, and he returned without Gabby?
Yeah, so on September 1st, Brian reportedly returned to his parents' home without Gabby and driving her white van. But neighbors say that everyone's been acting as if nothing happened, that Brian was out mowing the lawn, that he would go for a bike ride. And then some neighbors across the street say that they saw the parents loading up their camper trailer, towing it with the truck. It's a very small camper trailer, so they thought it was kind of odd that you'd have this couple taking their 23-year-old son on what appeared to be a weekend camping trip, but they left with the camper for several days and then returned. But the neighbors say that it's very strange behavior for a missing persons case where you have this family acting very nonchalantly as if nothing's happened.
Yeah, and that leads exactly into my next question for you, Jonathan. Do we know, you've been out there, boots on the ground. I see you're literally in front of the Northport police station. Do we know of any developments, and maybe will the parents be questioned a little bit more? I know that we've had teams outside of the Laundrie home, and it doesn't seem that they've even left their home. So what do we know about moves being made on the parents right now?
Yeah, everyone's frustrated, especially Gabby's family, that the parents haven't been more cooperative with authorities. From the get-go, they would only refer questions to their attorney when police tried to talk with them. And the first time they broke their silence was Friday of last week, when they called police saying that they wanted to talk to officers, but it was because they wanted to report their son missing. Apparently, they offered very little information on the Gabby Petito investigation. It was all focused on their son, who they say had left their home several days earlier, Tuesday of that week. They said that he was going hiking. He told them he was going hiking in that nature preserve, the Carlton Reserve, and then didn't come back for several days. They went out and they retrieved his car. And it was only after they brought the car, that Mustang, back to their property that they called authorities.
And Jonathan, I do want to show our audience some of the footage that we've got from another day of search efforts underway at that preserve. So yesterday we saw that dive team be called in. So does that mean that we're looking for a body, or does that mean that they just wanted to go and search more swampy areas of this land?
Yeah, it's actually the latter. There's been a lot of rain in this part of Florida, and so the Carlton Reserve, which is already a swamp, is now 75% underwater. And so they have this dive team, and they have a very specialized sonar that they use for large bodies of water. They also have cadaver dogs, but police say this is not the result of any evidence or any tips that they got. It's just part of the overall search. They want a very comprehensive search and just take into account all scenarios. Now, if Brian is indeed in the preserve, and if he is indeed still alive, we spoke with an eco guide, an eco tour guide, who said that someone with knowledge could survive almost indefinitely in that reserve. Because think of it, there's plenty of fresh water, there's plenty of fish, and if you know what types of wild edibles are safe to eat, with the proper skills, you could survive indefinitely. And so authorities are clearly hoping that he is somewhere in that 25,000 acre reserve, and they have been searching since Saturday, and they continue that search even as we speak.
All right, and Jonathan, I do believe that we just got a live picture from outside of the Laundrie family home. And what has the activity been looking like? Actually, as you just reported, Jonathan, we see that Mustang in the driveway. So what has the activity outside of the home been looking like?
Yeah, well, initially there was a lot of activity. You had the media surrounding the home. You had some protesters around the home. And whenever there were developments, sometimes the protesters would even encroach on the property. Police have since backed everyone off. They're not allowing people to gather on the street, and certainly not on the property. But people are keeping a watch from across the street on private property. Much fewer people in that neighborhood as police are restricting access. You really need to have business in there, and if you're media even, you have to have permission from private property owners to be on their property across the street. So much less activity than when this case was first reported, but everyone is keeping a keen eye on the Laundrie family home. And again, some significant developments today when we saw both of Brian Laundrie's parents leaving the home in their truck, and then the mother driving back in her Ford Mustang, a Ford Mustang that had been taken into evidence because Brian had been driving it extensively since his return to Florida after Gabby disappeared during their trip out west.
Yeah, definitely a new development this morning, and we thank you for bringing this to us here, Jonathan. My last question to you, I know you're busy, I don't want to keep you too long, but how come we have not, it's been days since we've gotten an official press briefing from lawyers, from police. Why is that, and when do you think that we'll hear from authorities next?
Yeah, well, there's been a shift in the investigation. Now that the investigation has taken steam and that a body was found in another state, the FBI is taking a lead. And so initially it was Northport that was leading the investigation. And so we were hearing from their PIO really on an as-needed basis multiple times a day. Now all questions are being referred to the FBI. It's much more centralized, and the FBI is being very tight-lipped about what evidence they have and what evidence they don't have, playing it very cautiously. Also, since a body's been found, Gabby's family, which had been very vocal with the media, giving interviews every day, they, through their attorney, have said, I'm paraphrasing, we need some space to grieve, but once the body is returned to us from the coroner, we'll talk again. And of course, Brian's family has been tight-lipped, both to police, other than reporting their son missing, and certainly to the media, referring all questions to Brian's attorney, who also has been very tight-lipped throughout this investigation, Regina.
All right, well, Fox's Jonathan Seri out there in Northport, Florida with us live and with a new development this Thursday morning. We thank you so much for your time here on Live Now from Fox. We really appreciate you and your team's efforts out there.